Give it 1 minute to start, and we should be good in that sense. Okay, so I'm going to take you off. Well, just it's just going to be back to the what do you call it, the backdrop as I
Oh,
should up, and then we'll just come in. We're just going to come in with a simple open, and then introduce you, and we'll start talking in from there.
okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you. Okay. Okay. Just got to get that. And welcome back, everyone. Thank you so very much for your time and attention and joining us here with the Subsumed Silent Creative Juneteenth 2021. Yeah, this is Dejan Sneed here, and I'm excited to bring on our next guest. An opportunity for us here with Subsume, as we always look for the intersection of technology, creativity, and community to look at some of the successful filmmakers of tomorrow, and also look at how we're making our stories included in the world of film. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in my next guest and add you into our stream. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would love to introduce you to film for women film Solomon Anita Solomon. Good day to you. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you so very much. So with that, we had the opportunity here during our Subsume Film Festival to bring our guests an opportunity to look at your film Taz, or is maybe known as Devil. So
Mhm.
with that, please make sure you get all on a few days and credits as an emerging filmmaker of note. So please introduce yourself and let us know about yourself and this fantastic work we'll talk about today.
Okay, yeah, my name is Solomon Onita Jr. Um, I'm kind of early stage or early career filmmaker. Tasmanian Devil was my first feature film. Um, I was born in the South in Texas, Houston, Texas. Ended up doing my undergrad in Dallas, and then I got a master's in film in Los Angeles. And I guess about 4 years, or no, 2 years after graduating from my master's program at LMU in Los Angeles, I went on to create Tasmanian Devil, which has brought me to this point. So I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to tell that story. And now I'm looking forward to other stories I can tell within my career.
But no, we're honored to catch you so early in what we know is going to be a long and successful career. So congratulations in advance. So before
Thank
we so before we get on with Tasmanian, let's just want to focus on yourself. Kind of what's your background as far as where you came from to get towards a career film? Was this something that you initially had always intended that you did, or is this something that you found yourself in a circumstance to become?
you. I feel like I always had that creative passion within me, and it manifested through filmmaking and storytelling. But I probably would have ended up in some type of creative field, or maybe even education or teaching, because I feel like I marry both of those together. Like in my films, I always like to leave the audience with some kind of message, or to where I can inspire or like expand the mind in some kind of way. So I feel like teaching and creative storytelling go hand in hand for me.
Oh, and that's fantastic. We're always looking at where stories are made from and the storytellers themselves.
Mm.
Now, so now, from your say for your family background, was there any part of talk to Taz that you feel is important for our viewers to know before we talk about the film?
Yeah, for myself, I'm a first generation Nigerian American. My family immigrated from Nigeria in the 80s and have lived in America ever since. So growing up as a first generation American, you see kind of life in two perspectives. You see it from the immigrant perspective and then from the African American perspective.
Mm.
And you understand that intersection a bit more keenly than somebody who doesn't have the alternative perspective. And so I would say with that, uh, I can sympathize and kind of connect to the hardships of like what it is to come to a new place without knowing anyone and having to build yourself from the ground up, and then also understand the perspective of, you know, people who have been here for generations under, you know, the umbrella of what America is or how America has treated African Americans, where they kind of have a lost identity and looking to find who they are within this system of America. So I understand those two sides very well, and I guess through my art, I try to like bridge the gap and create some kind of peace within each of these experiences.
I think that's well done with the film Tasmanian Devil. So us looking at that, for those who maybe first time hearing about the film, what was your pitch for Tasmanian Devil?
Tasmanian Devil is about a 19-year-old boy who moves from Nigeria to America to live with his estranged father, who he never really had a connection with growing up. And during that time, while he's living with his father, he's trying to also assimilate to American culture. And so he finds kind of like family and guidance through this fraternity. Although he came to America to get that from his father, he finds it through this fraternity. And so they're put at odds because the dad is extremely religious and views the fraternity as somewhat evil, but the boy is just kind of looking for that father figure, that male influence that he didn't have growing up. And so the conflict kind of culminates to, you know, the boy having to decide, is he going to do things for himself or do things from what his family kind of wants him to do. And it's a coming of age story about, you know, finding yourself and understanding your own personal journey.
Yeah. Now the main character, Dio, we as we know him and as he into the story is obviously brilliant, but obviously has opportunities not only with his father, but to your point of maybe finding space when he gets here. Now, is any of that more autobiographical? Is that anything that self or from anyone else you were able to draw any experiences from? Because it felt like Dial's character felt very familiar, even though again, talking about he's a character who's trading here to the United States to be with his father. But it seems like a lot of the personality that he has, as far as maybe even, and I don't want to overtalk it, but it seems like his acquisition of in the space and him scoping things out felt very authentic. How did you pull that off with creating this character?
Uh, I would say there's a bit of every character that's within me. You know, I poured myself within every character. The story itself is not autobiographical, but it is highly influenced from my own experiences. Um, Dio is an immigrant. I'm a first generation American, so our path is not exactly the same, but it's something that I understand very well because growing up as first generation, I've seen a lot of immigrants come to this country, and I know kind of what it takes to find your footing, or, you know, especially when you're younger, you're trying to find approval when you come as a teenager into a new place. You know, everyone wants to fit in, and so his journey is about finding approval, versus mine as a first generation was about more of like an understanding of the position I was in, seeing my parents, you know, searching for approval, and then seeing myself trying to navigate, you know, what it is I'm actually here to experience. So yeah, Dio is has a bit of influence from me too, because I also pledge a fraternity, and doing like while you pledge a fraternity, it's a similar journey of, you know, like what can I impact, what how can I leave an impact on this group, and you know what did I come to this group to also receive, and so you know that's kind of his main arc within the story of, you know, finding self.
Now, I can definitely relate to the part of Dio's father, Julius,
Hmm.
where he's outly religious. Of course, here in the South, devout religion and Christianity is very much a hallmark of Southern culture. So that juxtaposed against the coming of this, which is, to make got the Greek right, is Tau Alpha Zeta, or from that was Taz, correct? Now,
Hmm.
and again, I think the brilliance of this is the part where the fraternity in and of itself, is being compared to, of course, by father as a cult or something that's driving a divide uh, between Dio and his religious duties. Now, how did you come up with that concept of again kind of pitting those two together? Because again, when we look at fraternity life, particularly in Black culture and in Black HBCUs, it's strong. There's such a strong representation there as well. Just as we talk about Christianity in the South, the fraternities that we all know of in Black culture, and through Black education, likewise have almost a religious type of connectivity in both lives. So, what was your point of connecting those two as parts of the story?
Yeah, I would say growing up, me myself as well as like many young African American men, we view life as very polarizing, good versus bad, me versus them, stuff like that. That's the kind of mentality we're taught when we're younger, and we're shown that to place your morals and things that your community identifies as good. But then as you get older and you start to reevaluate some of these things, what you were taught was good might not necessarily be good for you as an adult. And it's about kind of like reclassifying that the two spectrums of like this versus that. And so when you take the fraternity and you take the religion, they both could, and they're both good and bad in their own way, and it's about how you perceive them. And so in the film I show them kind of like what they really are. Like these are guys in their early 20s who are interested in partying. There's a hazing aspect to the film, stuff like that. And so from the outside looking in, you think it's bad, but then to the ones who are participating, they are finding the goodness in it. They're finding some type of value within that. And so I guess the whole point for me was to question, like how are we, like the relativity of good and bad, things that we were taught, like church. Everyone kind of perceives church as something good, faithfulness and all that type of stuff, the spirituality of it. But to the kid, to Dio, that was the source of his pain growing up, because that's what took his father away. So he uses that as bad. And so that it was pretty much the juxtaposition of these two organizations, these two groups, and to question our morality around that, to see, it's okay to kind of pick and choose for yourself, because that's what this experience is all about: finding what identifies with you, what is your goodness. And it doesn't have to be the same as what your community says is good, but it's that own personal journey.
Yeah, awesome. And I encourage everybody just again to reiterate the cinematography of uh, when the Taz returns to campus. I thought
Hmm.
extremely well. It seemed the word's not authentic, but it seemed like it just would have been a visceral experience for somebody looking to be a part. That was definitely something to be.
Hmm.
Now, speaking to creating this fraternity, what were some of the aspects that you look to create in trying to make it that experience that would be that a young immigrant would be appealing? So when you're thinking of scene, what were some of the key points or keynotes that you come across for anyone that was?
I didn't want to glaze over the reality of what it was. Like there's a lot of like within media and culture in general. There's a lot of hate and negativity surrounding fraternities, because people view it as a popularity group. They force people to kind of conform and confine to like a certain system. There's all these negative thought energies around what a fraternity is. So I wanted to present it in a way that I didn't want to gloss over that, present it in a way that people understand it. And if you're not a part of it, that's how your understanding of it is. So when you present it that way, but then you follow the character and you see him interpreting it in a different sense, my hope was that, as a viewer, you can understand uh, outside of yourself, how somebody can identify with this and how they can find a safe haven within this. Because, some of the hazing scenes I show in the movie are very brutal. And, if you don't understand it, you're looking at it and like, why would anyone want to be a part of this? But then at the end of the day, you see that that's what he strives to achieve. And he wants to find acceptance through that, not because he views himself as less than, because he's open to the challenge of what the fraternity presents, and it's just something he wants to complete for his own validation. And so I just wanted to kind of keep that as an authentic piece, because I know when I was going through my process of pledging a fraternity, it was the same kind of issue. Like my parents didn't understand the value in it and what it could do. But for many people who are going through that process, it's the better making of man. You have to go through a fire. They say, like, when you plant a seed, it's when the seed is being crushed and is being compressed, that's when the flower kind of comes up and germinates. So they put you through certain things in order to kind of challenge you and not make you so comfortable. But then when you come out of it, you are a flower at the end of the day.
And as we all say, it is a time to bloom. After, to your point of going through all that germination and the processes in the rain to have your flower be seen in its time. So
Mm-hmm.
see Dio go through this transformation in a lot, and to your point, he wins advocates along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Really for those who see him maybe not being cut out for this, maybe not being able to make that transition to basically cross over. Now,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of speak more that experience, I'm looking at the way that the initial, well, I guess the earlier line looked at bringing these young men to their fraternity. There was a
Mm-hmm.
line. I'm going to give it the way it was given to me, right? And the idea of maybe part of this hazing and part of what it takes to be in that. There was a line of they've got to go through something.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like as a creator or even as anyone, you feel like that's part of a process to get to where you need to go. Maybe not so as visceral as maybe some of the hazing scenes that they kind of move on to the next step. Do you feel like the creator that you have to go through something to be your most authentic or get to that next level?
Not necessarily. I showed it within Tasmanian Devil in order to create conflict, but I don't always necessarily believe that as an individual, that your process has to be filled of hardship. I think, like the experience of life, people tend to reflect the pain and the trauma that they experience themselves, and you see that within the film. Like the line that just finished crossing, they're just reflecting that trauma on the next line. They want them to feel the same type of pain. But I feel like as we kind of evolve as people, like within the Black community and within the Black fraternity and sorority community, we're starting to learn that it's less about these little hazing incidents and all that, and it's more about connecting with our heart and finding that brotherhood or sisterhood within our heart, and that's the experience that we want to pass over versus the more the hazing and violent experiences. But like, I pledged over 10 years ago, and I don't think us as a culture have mentally evolved to that place yet. But as I'm kind of still in fraternity life and Greek life now, and I'm observing how the shift, and I think it's a bigger shift even beyond Greek life, but then within our community in general, we're starting to like act from our hearts and share the love of certain experiences versus like the hates and the negativity of certain experiences. And I think that's kind of like this next wave of energy that's being ushered in. Like if you think about politics, Trump had his era to where he kind of reflected to us some of the things that we didn't like within ourselves. Like people say that he showed us our shadow, and now we're being awakened to like some of these lower energies that we're seeing, and we're starting to move past that and express more from our hearts.
I think that's where the appropriateness and timeliness of this film really does resonate. So I feel like the story of Tasmanian Devil, and seeing young kids, young black kids in education, and having like this point of of additional concepts or additional ways of self, ways of being,
Mhm.
really really does come across well and for its time. So now, when you were making this film, do you feel like that part of that understanding of where we were in America was part of the reason maybe you proceeded with this film, or why this film may have gotten the popularity that it did? Or what was your perspective of as you're creating this film in this time, or I presume in this time of divisiveness in America? Was there any point of purviews that you noticed or felt like you wanted to make sure were coming across?
It's nothing that I was really conscious of when because I wrote the film in 2018. I shot it in 2019, and it came out in 2021. So that's a 4 year period of like how the consciousness of where we were at those particular time frames have changed. So I think when I was writing it, I was not aware. I was just trying to tell a story that was authentic to me, and then kind of how I tracked the life of it from first writing it down on paper to filming it, and then to finally editing it and seeing it on the screen. I paid attention to how it's been tracking, and I think those are the things kind of subconsciously that are being revealed to me now, and being revealed to the audience. If they take a deeper look at the film, they'll see the shift, even from like how it's being shown on screen to like how it's being reflected back to us in our reality. So, and that's something that I strive to do within all my work. Like with some of the things I'm writing now to produce later in the future, I'm being more cautious of like how is this reflecting back to us as a people, and how are we seeing ourselves? Because when you talk about African American content within film and television, we've been shown a very distinct view of ourselves through media. Like there's a lot of slave narratives. There's a lot of we're being shown that we just don't reach the mark. Like there's a lot of struggle narratives being projected back to us. So I'm just trying to change that a bit, like as I continue to make work to show us that we are more than what we've been seeing, and to kind of expand who our perspective of who we are through film and television.
No, and as you say, it's I think in its time, it's just become more and more succinct, and just in a real way, like you're saying, like us being able to be in control of our narrative and in control of our story, just simply validates why we're here. And again, as creatives, particularly Black creatives, having that agency to do so is now more than ever so important.
Mhm.
So again, that's where we're excited to kind of learn about you and your process. Now, so kind of step back and then we'll go back to the way the film resolved. In 2008, where you written your script, what was your process as far as getting to that next step? We have a lot of creatives that I've got this script within me, I've got this story I want to tell. So now for you, coming as a new filmmaker, what was your process of getting to that step? You already have some mentorship or space that you could present, or what was your journey to then say, I know I've got a great story that needs to be told. How do I get it out to how do I get it to that next phase?
Yeah. I would say while I was in it, I didn't know what my next moment was ever going to be. I just knew that I had to show up for the moment I was in presently. So when I was writing the script, I wasn't really thinking about how I'll get it made. I just knew that I should write the best thing I had in my head at the moment. Then when I was done with that, and I started to like think about how can I get this made, the pre-production parts of it, I was focused on that and not really focused on the production. And that's how I kind of attracted the resources that I did. The film was produced by Birdman and Benny Boom, as well as some of the local producers here in Dallas. And when you're doing something, or when you're like trying to better yourself, life has a way of like attracting helpers to you. So in that moment, I was trying to create something, and the help I needed to create it was coming towards me in different directions. Benny he's a frat brother of mine. He also plays Alpha Phi Alpha, so he identified with the story and the father son kind of connection from there, he was able to bring Birdman, who, was a big financial help for the film and helped us, kind of curate some of the music within the film as well. From there, we premiered at ABFF with Jeff Friday and Nicole Friday. They were really good at helping us, let the world know about this project and championing the film from the festival end. And then from there, that's how we found our distribution. So I didn't have distribution when I showed it at ABFF, but when it was seen by the people, through the online platform, because we had to do online festivals at the time, that's how, things kind of picked up. So I would, like, as an advice to people who are trying to start something from nothing, you really just have to focus on the moment you're in right now and trust that when you complete that moment, life will give you the support to complete the next moment. And that's just how I live my life, just focus within my current moment and then be assured that my next moment will satisfy itself when I get there.
And that's brilliant. And I think it just kind of speaks to the creative spirit, right? That we're creating because we have to create, right? That's just what's within us. There's a story that needs to be told. And
Mm-hmm.
I know myself, I'm guilty of this. So I'm looking ahead to, I've got this thing. Where can I position it? Where can I put it? Where can
Mm-hmm.
I find myself that, the road becomes easier. But
Mm-hmm.
the point of just being present in the space, particularly as a creative, I think is a great takeaway from what you just said. That's assuring that, again, you can kind of work within your craft, and to your point, know that the universe in itself, will see that work and that dedication, and that
Mm-hmm.
I proceed in from there. So your first time attending APFF, which again should be the American Black Film Festival, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Was this when you came with film in hand? Was your first time going there?
No, I was there in 2016 with a short film called Joy that from there led to me showing it on HBO. Like, I got a HBO deal from for the short film. So ABFF has always kind of been a part of my creative journey. They're a home that I feel comfortable sharing my work with. That I know that if I have a film at ABFF, it's in the right hands. It'll find the right audience. Versus, some of these other festivals, as a creative, you might be cautious. How will I be perceived when I go into this space? But ABFF, for African American filmmakers, it's very comforting because they have your best interests at heart, and it's one of my favorite festivals. So every time I have a project, I always submit there because I just love the family and the community of that festival and what Jeff Friday has built. Over a 20-year span, I really commend him because he had the vision, and in his vision, he saw people like me who are entering a space that we never really pioneered before, and he's given us support and a roadblock in order to be successful within this craft. So I'm just very appreciative of that whole experience.
No, absolutely. Shout out to the Fridays and to ABFF for, again, to your point, providing that platform and space, and that's where we also see as a need for creators, particularly for Black creators and marginalized voices. That you need that space where you can just share freely and without the other kind of points of preconception. That sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
at least for myself personally, that I feel like when we present our stories, that it's from an out space that other people are receiving and appreciating them. So being
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, that's a goal for myself here with Subsume, is to to make this type of space, for all creators, but those who want to appreciate Black and diaspora storytelling. So that's good in of itself. So now, I think that the next question would be: now you got the HBO deal, right? And so now your film premieres, well received. Can you kind of walk us through what once you get to that point where your show goes into a larger space? Were there any concerns or any points of like journey you then had to take on or had to learn about or had to find assistance or guidance in navigating?
So it was the short film. Joy was the one who went to HBO. With Tasmanian Devil, that's actually going to Stars. Uh, September 1st is when it shows on Stars. So I would say in both aspects, once it gets to a platform like that, it has a life of its own. I mean, you can. It's pretty much you're just watching how it unfolds, but the audience will come and see it. Uh, you'll get more eyeballs on your work, more reviews, and it just kind of grows within the consciousness. So it's pretty much just a thrill just to witness, because you see something that was just in your mind just 4 years ago, and then it hits a platform like a HBO or a Stars or a Netflix or something like that, and you see people that you never even thought of will care about such a story. You see them connecting to it, and you see, like this, an opportunity like this. I never foresaw that I'll talk about my film in this way when I first wrote it down, but that's what happens when it gets to like a platform like that, and you just enjoy the experience of it, and it gives you the kind of energy in making your next one. So
That's that's a good vindication of that yourself and your talent is,
mhm.
is enough. At the point, that once the opportunities can present themselves, that your ability can meet that challenge in such a way. So again, congratulations, brother. We're excited to see that part. So with
Thank
that, take a little bit of time to go back to the story and then just kind of open it up for some closing points. Now, the relationship of Dio and his father. For those, of course, who may not have had a chance to preview the film with us just so yet, we have Dio coming in from Nigeria, where he's lived with his mother, and he and his mother have been estranged from his father, who's been a minister, in Texas the entire time. Well, since a young age, I think was it about 8 years that he left?
Yeah, a bit more, maybe like 10 years or so.
Yes, sir, about 10 years. There we
Yeah.
go. And from there, now they're connected, with Dio's freshman year or transfer year, into the university and connecting with his father. Can you give us a point of how how Julian's mother and excuse me, Dio's mother and Julian's relationship maybe started? Because of course we see at the beginning, it's what I felt like would be the best case scenario, right? We see a proud parents, looking at all the potential of their son. Now,
Mhm.
what was the relationship with parents? I guess to say as we are looking at this initial scene.
Yeah, so in that initial scene, you see a family coming together, and they have all of the ideals of who they want to be in that moment. It's a loving relationship that produced a loving child, and that's the ultimate ideal for this family. Now, as you see like there's 8 flashbacks or 7 flashbacks in the movie, and as they progress, you see that ideal being fractured, and it starts to take a new form. And so for Dio, his whole goal throughout the entire movie is to get back to that ideal of that opening scene. And he doesn't really achieve it within the time span of the movie, but I leave it in a way to where you can imagine what could happen. Um, and so I think the bigger point to that is there's a lot of trauma within our experiences as Black people on this earth, and I just wanted to kind of present something that we could heal from. Like, we don't communicate that often as Black men, like fathers and sons. So there's a lot of built up tension, and you see that within the relationship. Husbands and wives, the how that is being shaped within us as a people is being redefined now. I think we're taking on new roles of how we relate to our spouses, how we relate to our kids, and you see that throughout this film. um, we start to lose selfishness, like him leaving his family to come to America. Initially, he said it was for religious purposes, but really it was a selfish act. He was pursuing a career thing over his family, which, there's nothing wrong. I'm not judging that move, but you see the effects of it, and you see the actions of them trying to heal it. Now, it's not going to always, be sunshine and rainbows as that healing process is taking place, but you see it in real time. I think that's why people can relate to it, because it's an authentic portrayal of just a family who's been fractured from their ideals and trying to kind of recreate that. And that's pretty much the whole journey of what this family is going through.
Yeah. And to your point, it brings a lot of great conversations to more the emotional range that a lot of times we see within Black families, particularly among Black men together, that we look to limit those type of conversations. It felt like between Dio and his father, it was the same thing, right? It seemed to be very minimal when it wasn't speaking direct the duties of the day church.
Hmm.
Fraternity brothers, likewise, the way that their language, at least the way it was initially set, was only one of just simply teaching the lesson as they were taught, which a lot of
Hmm.
times very, in that sense, very simple. I have to say simple, but in the way of we speak when we need to speak to each other. Ideals of masculinity that in some point, in this point, the part of it being the or maybe the toxic side of how some relationships can be, where like the
Yeah.
platform to get to what I felt was beautiful side of when they were right, that they found ways to relate with each other. And I think of
Hmm.
uh, I think when they were playing video games and Dio had a confrontation, with one of the Line brothers, right, and it was
Hmm.
typical. I'm going to swear at you. We're gonna handle, in a physical sense. But
Hmm.
kind of, flash forward to when it's the night that they're really getting made, right,
Hmm.
and they're taking those punches to the face, and they're like, and I remember Dio came up and hugged him, right, when he was,
Hmm.
in like it seemed like being this painful point, like his initial go and hold him, right?
Hmm.
I feel like there was a way that through all of that we were showing that that emotional response is natural. It wasn't anything that learned or had to be okay. We don't do that here, kind of.
Yeah.
But I felt like you did a great point in the scene of showing, as they were going through this, that
Hmm.
there was this idea that even though this journey they're going through a particular, set of initiation, that there's
Hmm.
a humanity that underlying and all of that. So one, I just want to appreciate that because a lot of times, as you said earlier, we see black stories only in one way, where black pain and black trauma more for a sense of for it to be a point of being maybe sensationalized. But I
Hmm.
think the way Tasmanian Devil absolutely took something that went that way and brought it across as a genuine point of a better. So again, thank you for that.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So with that, the story of Tasmanian Devil is one that seems to be of not just of our main character, but what happened. What do you feel like at the end? Because for our minister, Mr. Julian, when he saw his son almost go through that transformation on stage. Because I feel like I really want to know your opinion, or what you may like for the what was that point that you wanted to convey then.
I think for Julius, that's a full circle moment. I showed the flashbacks in that moment as well of how he been experiencing his son through early childhood to that point. And I think for him, he's seeing kind of his actions reflected back to him. When you watch your son kind of overcome that family trauma. I feel like we live in cycles and we just project the damage that was done to us. But he watches his son, he overcomes that. And so for Julius, that's why I thought it was satisfying to leave it there and not really show a scene afterwards, because I think in that moment he's being healed himself because he's watching his son be healed. And you can just assume that afterwards they can form a better relationship and talk about some of the trauma that they have experienced, because there is now healing in their midst. um and yeah, that's kind of how I wanted to leave it. I think it mainly, yeah, like we see Dio arc, and then for Julius, he's seen like it's the start of his story. So if I was to make a part two, it'll be Julius's transformation.
Now there we go. Okay, I felt like there was a mutual transformation going on at that point. And again,
Hmm.
myself as a fan of this, where to your point, it seemed like there was a lot of obviously unresolved points, for him, and then to see his
Hmm.
son seem to maybe have some of vindication in front of him. I felt like it
Hmm.
gave optimism for him, where I think that the dedication to the church and that dedication to God was authentic part of who he and his character were, but it was
Hmm.
also a foil to which obviously he didn't have the best relationship with the with his child living in the same house. But
Mhm.
that's good to hear because I feel like it was open ended enough that it seemed like the story for both of them should be one that will continue. So is that something maybe on your plate on your list of things to do right now? Too early to.
Uh, it's nothing that I really aspire towards. But if the opportunity comes to where, you know, somebody wants to commission me to make a part two, then yeah, I'll be open to do it. But it's not nothing that's on my forefront right now.
No worries. No, that's good. And to that, I'm sure this will start any successes forward. So now I wanted to kind of look down, kind of what is next. We have Tasmanian Devil, who we have where it'll be to larger audiences here soon, and for,
Mhm.
again, a well received and award start. And so this film won, um, just won a recent accolade.
Yeah.
With can you tell us about what the process was for that and how has that been, since?
Yeah, so the film won the first ever John Singleton Award for debut feature filmmaking, and the reason that award resonates so powerfully with me because John Singleton is somebody that was a blueprint of how I wanted or how I want my career to kind of unfold. When you think of John Singleton, obviously he's passed now, but what he left behind was actually a set of instructions of how to be authentic within whatever you're doing. Starting with Boys in the Hood, um, coming out of USC and creating a film like that. I felt although Tasmanian Devil and Boys in the Hood are two different kind of films, but it kind of holds the same energy as like what it could do for the community at the time it came out. I think Boys in the Hood for that time was also another kind of healing film. Like we see our traumas portrayed in that movie, and then when you're watching it, you're kind of receiving healing because he's putting it in a way that you can digest it and understand it. Um, and so stuff like that, like although we're not telling the same stories, but the effects of what these stories do is what I kind of want to model myself as a storyteller. Like going back to ancient times, storytellers were always the ones who provided healings for the community. And I think us as Black men who have the capacity to tell these kind of stories, that's what we should be doing for our communities because there's a lot of pain, and we deserve to feel loved and to kind of move past these moments and understand that there's something greater for us if we can just see ourselves a bit differently.
No, so well said, and thank you for that. So again, and congratulations, of course. Now, so what's next? Again, you're the inaugural winner of this prestigious and well deserved award, and got some other points there. What are you working on currently, or what is it that you'd like to make as your next steps towards your visionary future?
Yeah, so I have two projects that I created personally. I have a feature film as kind of a horror in the sense of like a Get Out type of thing, social consciousness horror, to where the vehicle is horror and is doing that within the genre, but when you take a step back, you see that it's also a social conscious message and having us view ourselves a bit differently. So it's on the same themes of that. And then I have a TV series that is very similar. So I have those two projects that I'm currently working on. And this past summer in 2020, I did the Warner Brothers Directors Workshop. So I'm now being kind of prepped to start to direct TV episodic episodes, for like Warner Brothers or any other company who has a show. So between those two lanes of pursuing television work as a director for hire and then creating my own stories, that's kind of how I'm moving forward.
Well, that's again, congratulations yet again, and again, I know this comes with dedication and sacrifice, and being as authentic and as in tune with your craft as possibly can be. For those who at likewise now looking at you as the new blueprint or new point of a point of following in your footsteps as a creator, particularly with all the things that we've kind of talked about. Any parting advice or points of narrative that you love to share or showcase, for us who are looking to make sure that Black creative stories are told in this way?
I would say for me, I care about us being very true to who we are. Like a lot of times, I think earlier Black creatives try to explain our existence for different cultures, for like, for white people or people outside of our cultures, which is fine, because when you think about it as a business, if you want to be profitable within this film business, you have to serve the consumer base, and the consumer base is majority, white folks. So you'll see a lot of creatives telling a story in order to they create it for a white gaze instead of creating it for us. So I think both is fine, but me personally, I'm trying to create stories for us in order to for us to understand each other better, and if anybody outside of our community finds value in that, they're welcome to watch and understand. But my main my main thing is to satisfy us first, and so that's just kind of my motto and my goal as a storyteller. And I just want to continue to do works that satisfy that. Um, and I guess advice is that find whatever that thing is, like the reason of why you're doing this, because it's up and down journey being a filmmaker, because it's not really a business that was welcoming to us. Like there's no blueprint of how to be successful in this business as a person of color. So you really need to know why you're doing it and how you value, how are you judging your success of what you're doing. And once you find that, it makes the process easier. It makes those moments that I talked about easier, because you're loving yourself versus looking for love and validation outside of yourself. And so that would be my advice, is to find that reason and to hold it, and make sure you know why you're doing it from moment to moment.
So well said and eloquently put. So with that, as we want to continue and again to champion not your current success now, but also find ways to support and keep you sustained and excellent. How can we follow you and keep up with you and your work?
Yeah, on social media, I'm at Solomon Onita Jr. That's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. I'm not really on social media that much, but I post like my career achievements on there, so that's the best way to track me. And then if I'm always open to interaction, to talking with people and exchanging ideas. So feel free to contact me in any form that you can.
Brother, again, we appreciate you so very much, Solomon, and thank you for this, not only for this time today, but for the fantastic film, which I'm sure as it goes to larger audiences, will have you busy with you pursuing your dreams in the way that you have. So, again, thank you so very much for the time. We appreciate you here. And again, thank you for being one of our inaugural films here for our Subsume Film Festival. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And I'm
Yeah,
sure you
thanks for having me.
have more things here to come.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, take care. Thank you so very, very much. And as we bring our series here to a close for this particular point, again, we just had a chance to speak with Solomon Onata Jr. and his film, film Tasmanian Devil. So that we're here showing with this and some other points of new and independent filmmakers from throughout the creative diaspora here with our Subsume Summit on Creative Juneteenth. Again, this is Daniel Sneed, and I thank you all so very much for being a part. Stay tuned, as I'm sure we have more programming on the way. Take care.